Hi, my name's Janelle and welcome back to Rosery Apparel. Today I'm back with some more 30-minute sewing projects. You can make these sewing projects in less than an hour, or you can really take your time with them and make them over an afternoon or a couple of days. It's completely up to you, but in this video I'm basically just sharing some quick-ish sewing projects that you can make, and yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start by making this adorable round gathered cushion. For this project you'll need your fabric of choice. A mid-weight fabric works best, and I'll have a link to the exact fabric I'm using in the description below this video. A round cushion insert, the one I'm using is 38 centimeters or 15 inches in diameter, and a large self-cover button kit. Start by cutting out a rectangle from your fabric that's approximately 35 centimeters or 14 inches by 100 centimeters or 40 inches. Next, with right sides together, fold the rectangle in half and stitch the raw edges together like this. Then, using an overlocker or the zigzag stitch of your sewing machine, stitch along the remaining raw edges to prevent them from fraying. Next, set the stitch length of your sewing machine to the longest possible setting, and sew 2 rows of gathering stitches along both ends of the rectangle like this. Next, gently pull on the top 2 threads to gather up the fabric on one of the ends. Then use a needle and thread to hand stitch the ends securely together, making sure that the edge of the fabric is nicely tucked in towards the inside of the cushion. Then take your cushion insert and place it inside, making sure that the gathering stitches that we just made are positioned at the center of the insert. Then simply gather up the other side of the cushion and hand sew the gathering securely in place, closing the opening as you sew. Now it's time to make the self-covered buttons. Simply follow the directions for the kit you're using. For mine, I cut a circle of fabric slightly bigger than the button itself. And then, using a needle and thread, I stitched a simple gathering stitch along the outside edge of the fabric circle. Then I placed the button onto the wrong side of the fabric and pulled the thread to gather the fabric around the button. Then I popped the button back into position, clamping the fabric in place at the same time. Once you have your buttons made, hand sew them onto the cushion, covering the gathered openings with the buttons. Also, if you're able to, sew the thread through the center of the cushion and secure the button in place on the other side with a double knot. Lastly, remove any exposed gathering stitches with a seam ripper, and your lovely gathered cushion is complete. Next, let's make some fabric bowl covers. For this project, you're going to need your fabric of choice. Something breathable like a cotton works best, and some thin elastic. Take the bowl you're making the cover for and mark and cut out a circle that's approximately 6 centimeters or 2.5 inches bigger than the bowl itself. Then overlock or zigzag stitch the raw edge of the fabric circle. Next, we're going to need to hem the outside edge of the fabric, and because it is in the shape of a circle, this part is going to be a little bit tricky. So to make it slightly easier, sew a gathering stitch along the entire outside edge and then pull on the top thread to gather the fabric ever so slightly. The gathering kind of shrinks up the fabric slightly to be able to hem the curved edge while still keeping the smooth circular shape. When pressing the edge in, you might have the fabric bunch up a little bit, but because we're going to be gathering up the fabric with elastic in a minute anyway, the bunching won't be noticeable once the cover is finished. Stitch the folded edge in place, leaving a small opening to be able to thread some elastic through. Next, cut a length of elastic that fits snugly around the bowl you want to cover, and then use a safety pin to thread the elastic into the casing we just made. Once thread all the way through, tie the two ends of elastic together with a double knot. Then lastly, stitch the opening closed. And your fabric bowl cover is complete. Next, let me show you how to make some reusable shopping bags. For this project, you will need some lightweight fabric and some bias binding. I personally think some contrasting binding looks super cute. You will also need to download the free template I made just for this project. You can find a link to it in the description of this video. Start by cutting out the template in your fabric. Then you should have two bag pieces cut out, which once unfolded should look like this. For each bag piece, place the handles together and stitch them together like this. Then with right sides together, place the two bag pieces on top of one another and stitch them together like this. Once stitched, overlock or zigzag stitch the stitched raw edges to prevent them from fraying. And your bag should now be looking a little something like this. Next, turn the bag inside out and pin the bias binding to the wrong side of the bag along the remaining raw edges. Then stitch the bias binding in place, stitching into the unfolded crease of the bias binding. Then fold and press the binding onto the right side of the bag and pin and stitch it in place, securing the raw edges of the fabric to the inside of the binding. And your reusable shopping bag is complete. Lastly, let me show you how to make a ruffled tablecloth. For this project, I'm using some fabric recycled from a bedsheet, as bedsheets are really wide and perfect for a tablecloth. Start by cutting a square or rectangle of the fabric that's approximately 10 centimeters or 4 inches bigger than the table you're making the tablecloth for. For the ruffles, also cut out 2 rectangles of fabric that are at least 2 times the length of the tablecloth rectangle by approximately 20 centimeters or 8 inches. Like me, you may need to stitch multiple lengths of fabric together to get the length of the ruffle pieces, so start by stitching these together. Next, hem the sides of the ruffle pieces, leaving one of the longer edges unhemmed. Then set your sewing machine stitch to the longest possible setting, and sew 2 rows of gathering stitches along the unhemmed edge of both ruffle rectangles. Then gently pull on the top threads to gather the ruffle pieces until they're approximately the same size as the tablecloth. Next, take the large piece of fabric that will make up the main part of the tablecloth and hem the 2 shorter edges. Then with right sides together, pin and stitch the ruffles to the unhemmed edge of the tablecloth. Stitch the ruffles in place and overlock or zigzag stitch the raw edges to prevent them from fraying. Lastly, give the ruffled edges a good press with your iron and your adorable ruffled tablecloth is complete. So I hope you enjoyed this video and that it's given you some fun ideas for some sewing projects to try. If you do have a go at making any of these projects that I've shared in this video, then I would love to see them. So be sure to tag me at Rosery Apparel when you share your photos on Instagram. And if you did enjoy this video, I would love it if you could give it a like and subscribe to this channel for more sewing videos like this one. Have a lovely day and thanks for watching.